Welcome to another edition of the DJ Doran Show. I'm your host, DJ Doran, and I'm here with the very interesting Stephen B. Russell. Stephen, welcome to the show.
Well, it's Stephen Russell B, but we got it close.
Oh.
We moved the B in the Russell.
Oh, I guess I'm wrong. Okay. I mean, hold on. We'll just redo that. Let's just redo that. I saw that.
I think it's gold, though.
Geez, we have had technical difficulties, and then I fucked up your name right at the starting gate. So, but I saw that. But I'm a retired military pilot, so I see first name, last name, middle initial. That's how my brain thinks.
Yeah. It's, to be honest, it is kind of weird the way that I have it, but so I'm honestly not surprised that you get confused.
Got it. Well, anyway, listen, we're just going to welcome Stephen to the show. How about that? So Stephen is a Chicago YouTuber, right? So,
Yep.
Steve, before we get too far into things, tell our audience a little bit about yourself. First, let's start with that.
Sure. So I'm originally from Northeast Ohio. That's where I was born and raised, but I moved here to Chicago in early 2016, and I've lived here ever since then. There was a few steps along the way before I got between Ohio and getting here to Chicago. Those included Tennessee, West Virginia, Orlando, Florida, and now I'm here in Chicago.
Oh, excellent. How do you like Chicago?
I love Chicago. I've been here for a while, and one of the main reasons why I ended up moving here was because prior to the time of me living here, I was an on-air TV news reporter in West Virginia, which it's cool to, the TV experience is really cool. But when you get done with work and there's just nothing going on and you're a high energy person like me, it can kind of bum you out after a while. So I used to think a lot about the day when I could move to a big city when I was living out in, I lived in more rural places my entire life, or most of my life. So this was like a big deal to move here.
Absolutely. Well, I've been here. This is my second round. So the first round, we moved here in 2008. We were here for a few years. And then when the economy crashed, we left and moved on to a sailboat and lived on that for 3 years. And then this time we've been back for about 2 years. And I love Chicago. I'm from New York. I'm from New York originally. So Chicago to me is like a borough city. It's small enough where I can get around. And we live in Lakeview, right on the lake. So it's easy to commute downtown. It's only 15 minutes away. But when I feel like going to the city, it's right there. When I don't feel like going to the city, I live in a neighborhood, And of course, there's some things I love about Chicago, things I could probably live without. I'm not a big fan of the deep dish pizza thing.
That's not a surprise as a New Yorker, though.
Yeah, because we fold our pizza, and you can't fold something that's 4 inches thick. And everyone said, "Oh my God, the Chicago winters," and I was like, "Okay, New York has winter too." But I was here during the polar vortex. Were you here for that?
Was that 2015?
No, that was a couple of years ago. Remember when Jussie Smollett got mugged in the middle of it?
Oh, yeah. I was here for that.
Yeah. So I did go out, and I don't know if you see, but I have really bushy eyebrows. I went out and I went for a walk along the lake, and everyone says, "Don't go out for a walk. It's like 40 degrees below zero." But I wanted to see what it was like. And I went out and I walked about a quarter of a mile, and then I was like, nope. So I headed back, and my eyebrows froze. And I was afraid to touch them because I was afraid they were going to break and fall off. And then I'd be one of those creepy people with no eyebrows. That's cold.
Yeah, no, it can get pretty cold here in Chicago. I'd say the weather here is somewhat similar to growing up in Northeast Ohio. It's pretty cold too. Like, because if you think about it, I think I think the actual latitude of Cleveland is about the same as New York City. So it's pretty comparable weather-wise. I think you get a little bit more snow, but maybe it's not quite as cold as it is here. So I've definitely seen some cold weather and snow in my life.
Yeah, so it doesn't bother me. It's easy. Like, it's right almost in the middle of the country, so it's easy to get to the West Coast, and it's easy to get back to New York. So
yeah.
And I travel a lot for my other businesses and things. So let me I noticed that you're primarily on YouTube, right? And I've watched some of your videos. I watched the one where you talked about YouTube monetizing. I thought that was interesting. And I like the one about the living in a pandemic world, because that's where we're living, right? Mm-hmm. So, I don't know how much you know about me, but I'm in LGBT media. So I own several publications. And all of those publications have digital offerings like podcasts or YouTube channels. I also publish Gaycation Magazine, and we're producing the Gaycation Travel Show with Robbie Roth, which is going to be launched in October on YouTube specifically. And I had to, when we were first researching this, we had to understand what YouTube was about, right? And how it works. And licensing, they can use your content for anything while it's on YouTube. But once you leave YouTube, then the copyright and all of that reverts back to you. So they can't use your content once you leave it. But by being on YouTube, you have that big platform. So tell me, like, why you chose YouTube and how did you get started as a YouTuber, and what does that mean exactly?
Yeah, this actually originates back to so when I was a little kid, I grew up in I'm just old enough where I still grew up in the era where the TV was a focal point of my house. Like it was not the smartphone.
I saw the video.
Yeah.
I saw
exactly.
your video when you're first on YouTube.
Yeah. So when I was a kid, TV was like the big focal point, and it was something that was always the center of people's households. So I was always very interested in that idea that people would, I don't know, watch me on TV when they were eating dinner, or just the idea that I was sort of a part of people's families, because I just loved that as a kid, thinking that these people on TV somehow had a role in my life. So I've always been interested in that platform, and my dream job as a kid was becoming like the next Letterman or the next Howard Stern, like something along those lines. I liked Conan O'Brien. Like those were the kind of idols that I would look up to. And as time went on, I started to recognize, but like when I was in college, I started to pay attention to the fact that people were spending more time on their phones, and people were spending more time like watching Netflix and stuff like that. Like I was starting to watch this transition happen while I was in school for broadcast. So I went and I did get my first job was on TV, like being a TV news personality. That was like my way in to do something with TV. But I pretty early on recognized how things were shifting, and that people weren't paying as much attention to what people were doing on that platform. And a lot of people were hitting it big on YouTube. And a lot of people the thing I liked about YouTube was it was full creative freedom, because when you're in the news, you get very little creative freedom. It's pretty much, here are your news stories. Now go out and about all day, make these stories, and then come back and either give them to an anchor or turn it into a news package that will play later on. But there wasn't a lot of creative freedom over it because it's a corporation. So what I liked about YouTube is it was the opportunity to do the thing that I loved, which was entertaining people, but do it in a manner in which I had the creative freedom and I got to dictate what happened there. And I've seen a lot of people be very successful and create businesses out of this type of thing. So it just seemed like I already knew how to be in front of a camera, and I already felt like I was creative. So I figured I could probably do this on the side while I started like saving up money doing some other things. And it's just like progressively been something that I've gotten better and better at.
So that brings up the question, why wouldn't you pursue acting if you like being in front of the camera?
This is actually a really irrelevant question, because when I was a senior in college, this actually was my debate. So if you asked me when I was a senior in college what I was probably going to end up doing, I was actually leaning in the direction of doing acting because I liked acting so much. But my fear at the time was the lack of ownership over, or maybe not ownership, but the lack of control over things. Like the idea of having to go to all these auditions and just hoping that somebody believed in me enough to give me that chance. That felt out of my control a lot. Like I'm very much a control person. Like I want to feel like my destiny is something in which I can like grab onto and I can take control of. So I started getting a little anxious on the idea of just moving out to LA, because I also felt like that wasn't where the future was. Like I didn't feel like LA was just going to continue to be this place where you had to be. I thought at some point it would pivot because of the opportunities in front of us now with being able to do things from the comfort of your home. So that kind of just pushed me in the direction of, why don't I do the news thing and see how I feel about that? Because at least there, I thought at the time I had a little bit more control. I wasn't right about that. I had less control. Probably would have been better off doing the acting thing. But I kind of like a little bit of stability to be more productive. So I wanted to do something where I think I liked the idea of going into like news originally because it felt a little bit more stable. Like it felt like a little sturdier than just kind of hoping that someone was going to do something. Like at least I was guaranteed a paycheck. So I think that was sort of like the defining thing that made me do that. But, along the way, I've learned that I was right and wrong about some of those things.
So having said that, it seems to me that the natural progression after not deciding to go or to pursue acting would have been into radio. So tell me why that didn't happen.
Yeah. So I actually, in college, I was a radio DJ for like a year. So I had a minimal experience. I wouldn't say by any means. I wasn't very good at it. And it was something that I didn't have as much of a passion for. So the reason why I liked TV and didn't want to do radio is I liked the pressure of being in front of a camera. There's something about it that I just kind of like, I find it to be mesmerizing more than being just a voice. Which is actually part of the reason why I think I had maybe heard of podcasting like further in the, like, I don't know, back in like 2014 or something. I don't even know when I started hearing about it, but I hadn't really taken much of an interest. And I feel like that was actually kind of something I should have done earlier. But I just wasn't as interested in doing the radio portion of it because I felt like I wanted people to see what I was doing. Like I liked the idea of actually being in front of the camera. And I was kind of just like, I get to choose between these two and I want to choose to be in front of the camera. And there wasn't like a ton of logic behind it probably.
No, I get it. But let me ask you this. For YouTube, right, you get to be in front of the camera. And I followed a few of them. And when I was doing some research on what you're doing, a couple of people came up. You ever heard, I'm sure you have, PewDiePie, is that his name? How do you say it?
PewDiePie?
Yep. Yeah. Or what about that little kid that reviews toys, that makes like $10 million a year?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And he's like 4 or 5 or 6 or whatever he is. And he just says, I like this toy. I play with this all the time. And now he's, gets $10 million a year from his YouTube channel. Do you ever think, I often wonder with YouTube, it's sort of like, it is like acting because for every Tom Cruise, there's 10,000 others that don't even get, a callback for anything, or they, can't make a living at it. Do you ever say to yourself, hey, I'm creating this YouTube channel and I don't have enough traction to monetize it to the point where I can support myself. Is it worth it?
Yeah, that's definitely something that I think about regularly because it is an oversaturated platform and it's also a really difficult one. Like it does, like, because now YouTube has been around for about 15 years, there isn't the same trajectory as there was back in the day of how you could be discovered. So it's definitely oversaturated. It definitely, it causes people to have to be pretty creative in being discovered. And I kind of, it's something, I definitely do worry about because it does take a long time to be able to get full sustainability on just the platform. That's where part of just my competitiveness, I'm just like, I think you have to really believe in what you're doing and actually also be willing to put in the time. And those are the two of the things that I've always felt about myself is I've always felt like I had the talent to do it and I no doubt had the work ethic to do it. And if I put those two together, the only thing that was left is, would I actually be discovered from the marketing side or would YouTube actually recommend my videos? Because that is not in my control and it does bother me because there's times where I'm like, wow, this was one of my best videos and it got like no views. And then another time I'll just throw a video together and I'm just like, why did this video get way more views than the last one? I don't even understand this. So it is a little scary because there's that lack of control over if you actually do well. So you got to control what you can control, which I think is what I've been doing. And then I think you also have to be willing to realize that it may not be YouTube that becomes the big money maker. Like for me, I've realized that maybe I'll never be a big YouTuber, but I will, the things that I'm learning and the connections that I can get through this might essentially be my key into something.
Right. Well, I can tell you as a publisher and as a CEO of 5 companies in LGBT media, I can tell you that what we look for when we create content is audience size, right? And the way that you create larger audiences is you leapfrog over your partners or your alliances. So you create alliances with other people that share your content and so forth and so on and so on. And one of the things that that even in doing my podcast, because I'm a very busy person myself, I'm in the middle of several acquisitions right now, and it's difficult to make the time for the podcast, but I committed to it in the very beginning. And part of success is showing up and being consistent all the time, even when you don't feel like doing it. Be consistent and show up. And then what happens is eventually opportunity will be there and you'll be ready. And if I always tell people when I give speeches about entrepreneurship is that if you expect someone to come on knocking on your door offering you success, you're stupid. It doesn't work that way. It never works that way. Those people are when they get that knock on the door, those people have been working their butts off, sometimes for years, waiting for that knock. So that's my advice is you do what you are passionate about, do it for the right reason. Don't worry about the money, because the money will come at some point. It's just statistics. The more you're involved in it, the more it will you get closer to it. And I think you're right, YouTube is saturated. So what we do is we create unique content, right? So we do things that are unique, like the travel show that we're doing for the Gaycation brand. Never been done in the market the way we're doing it. So you got to think outside the box, because in an ocean of everybody else, you got to stand out. And that's what I think happens. Like PewDiePie and this kid, they just found a little hook and people reacted to it. So if you're talking about what's happening in Chicago, there are probably other people talking about what's happening in Chicago. I'm based in Chicago. You have to set yourself apart because they're not following so much what you're saying, Stephen. They're following you, right? You are the hook. And so that's the thing that I talk about as well is even in business, people don't invest in a business plan. They invest in the CEO. They invest in the team, the people. And so if I would give you a piece of advice, it would be is be yourself. That's what you're selling. You're not selling what you're saying. And if you become too gimmicky, then there's a saturation of that.
I couldn't agree with you anymore. This has been my thought process all along is I know there's been people who have told me to do certain things with my YouTube channel and have tried to push me in certain directions, but ultimately I need to do things that I actually believe in and that I want to do in the long run and things that I feel like I can be unique. Like I do things in a way that I feel good about. I'm not trying to emulate anyone specifically, and I would rather just do things the right way than feel like I had to make a compromise of who I was just to try to speed this up or something. Because I just feel like in the end, this is all going to work out very practically. Like if I do something the wrong way, eventually I just feel like it's going to come back and I'm going to feel trapped against a corner doing content I don't want to do, or I'm going to look myself in the mirror and be like, that's not who I want to be.
Right.
And I just don't want to run into that.
After I watched your videos, I'll tell you this. And if you don't know it, this is free advice. You are the brand. Right? So anybody else is going to make money off of you. They're going to say, hey, I want you to do this because I'll make money off of you. And I want you to do that because I'll make money off of you. And you have to maintain the integrity of your brand, because if you start doing that, then before you know it, there is no you. And once you stop producing money, guess what? You're old news. So what I'm saying is protect that, right? Protect that. Don't compromise your integrity of what you're doing. And plus, don't do anything that's going to diminish your passion for what you're doing. If you are true to your brand and you're true to yourself, you'll get up every day and say, I love doing what I'm doing and I love creating this. And that's the key in my view. So that would be my advice to you. Yeah.
And I fully agree. And I think that if there's any difficulty in ever doing it, I definitely think that for some people, and I definitely go through this too. I'm not saying this isn't how I am, but there are definitely times where you'll just see external numbers and be like, damn, maybe I should actually listen to people because I'm not quite getting the outside validation that I want to be getting right now in this moment. So I've had to focus on the idea that this is a long haul and maybe I can do something for the short term gain, but ultimately this is what I'm trying to do long term. So
right, that's
that a lot.
I think that's a good attitude. Joe Rogan, was a comedian and didn't have a podcast or anything, and it was a long haul before he signed a $30 million or $300 million contract or whatever he signed with Spotify just recently. It doesn't happen overnight, and anyone that tells you that, is really blowing smoke, because ultimately, Stephen, is content creation is you have to be unique, because I'll tell you, I'm just trying to look up. See if I had any other publications around. I always get like 10 or 12 publications a month, and I look at all the different magazines. And you know what I say? They all have the same damn content, just a little bit different. They put a little bit different here, a little bit, all the same. So I could read one story in 10 magazines, the same story. But every once in a while, I'll pick up a publication and there'll be a story that I haven't seen anywhere else, and that interests me. That's what I believe creating a podcast is about, and I think that's what creating any sort of video content is about. When I first started doing my podcast, I had these conversations with Nick, and I said, who's going to want to hear what I have to say? And because there's so many people out there, there's an ocean of people out there, but I committed to doing the podcast, and I just tune all that out. And I would suggest the same for you. Don't worry about what anybody else is doing. Don't worry about what numbers somebody else has. You focus on creating the best content that you can, and someone will recognize that eventually.
Yeah, you have to be pretty good at being able to block it out. And that's why I think believing in yourself, as cliche as it is, I think that's a big part of it, because when you believe in yourself, then you're just like, you can go to that default whenever you have any sort of thoughts about people on the outside telling you this or that. You can think, oh, well, okay, maybe they told me that I should make my videos like this, or I should change up my intros or something, but I believe in what I'm doing here. So like, do I listen to them, or do I just kind of continue doing what I'm doing that feels right? And sometimes it can 100%. Be kind of
I'm telling you, Stephen, trust your instinct 100%, right? And the other thing is learn from other people. Like before I launched my podcast, I think I listened to hundreds of podcasts, and I said, I don't want to be like that. And I don't want to, and so Nick can validate this, is that when I started, I said, I want, no matter how successful it is or is not, I want to produce the most professionally produced podcast that we can, with the best equipment, with, the best infrastructure and all of that. Watching your YouTube channels, a lot of people, I've watched a whole bunch of YouTubes, and they just get up there, they're amateur, they're filming, what their daily lives or whatever. But if you're a professional YouTuber, if you want to aspire to be a professional YouTuber, then you have to think beyond that. You have to think of not only the content, but the production value of what you're creating. And all I'm telling you is that when you start focusing like that, and you look at what you're creating as a real artist creating content, then everything else doesn't matter, because it's you creating that. Somebody else is not creating it for you. You're creating it. So it's already unique to yourself. But I always have the same thing. I'm much older than you, but I still have the same challenges. When I started my podcast, I was like, who wants to hear from me? And Nick would say, well, you have a very interesting life and people will want to hear from you. But see, I don't think that, because the way I view myself is different from the way others view me. Right. And once you realize that, wait, maybe I've heard this story 100 times before, but John hasn't, and it may help him.
Yeah, I definitely think you gotta get that out of your head sometimes.
Yeah. Okay, so enough about the entrepreneurship. Let's go on to some other things. Why is Chicago the primary focus of your YouTube channel? Is there a particular reason?
Yeah, so this kind of happened because a while ago, when I first just experimented with the idea of doing YouTube, I made a video about Disney, and it actually, for back then, it did pretty well. And I made one other video about Disney, and then I kind of just faded out and didn't really make videos, or I rarely made videos. And I had realized that a lot of YouTube success is finding something and then making a lot of videos that are kind of in a way in which your audience can familiarize themselves with the type of content that you're doing. So I had experimented doing different types of things to try to find something that I really like doing. And I made a video where I talked about my experience moving to Chicago back at sort of the end of 2018-ish. And that is my most viewed video. And after I did that, I was like, oh, people actually kind of like this. And I also feel like I've kind of wanted one thing to thread my videos together. And I feel like Chicago is a good way to do it. So I just started making more videos about Chicago because it gave me some like consistent topics to talk about. And I just kept going with that. And then I started doing vlogs around the city of Chicago. And though now I've sort of shifted away from making all my topic videos about Chicago, there will always be a lot of Chicago content on my channel because I do a lot of live streams with my audience. We talk about Chicago stuff. I do, if there's like a current event in Chicago, a lot of times people want me to weigh in on it. So I'll do those types of videos. And yeah, I mean, those vlog videos out and about in the city, like that gives people a window into the city. But it was kind of easy to do. And it was something that I enjoyed doing. And I felt like it was authentic to me. And though I've started to branch out a bit more recently, I think it just was a good way to give me some discipline on a topic that I enjoy doing.
So that brings up a question. How long is the average length of one of your videos?
So I usually shoot for making the video between like 10 and 15 minutes, but sometimes you'll see videos as short as like 4 or 5 minutes. And then sometimes you'll see videos that are like 20 to 30 minutes. But I'd say 10 to 15 is around what I shoot for when I make a video.
And how do you decide your topics?
I have, I don't know if you're familiar with this tool called Trello. It's like a project management tool.
Yep. Yes.
So whenever I have an idea that pops into my head, I'll write it on there. So I have like probably 200 ideas that are listed on the Trello. Organization is a big key for me, like when I can physically see things in front of me. So when I have an idea that pops into my head, I'll add it to the Trello board. I think when I was doing a lot of Chicago topic videos, I just would kind of read my comments and see, what kind of questions are people asking. And then if I wanted to, I won't make a video, to be honest with you, if I don't want to make it. So if I see a topic that I just don't want to talk about, like for example, I'm not really a foodie at all. So I don't feel comfortable talking about like food topics because I don't have passion for it, especially in comparison to a lot of people. But if I find a topic that someone asked me to talk about that I'm like, okay, I got opinions on this. I'll do it that way. Sometimes I'll go to the trending section on YouTube to see what people are talking about. And then just sometimes I have something that I'm feeling in that moment, like a life event I want to talk about or something from my past, and I'll just talk about it then. So there's a lot of different ways that it comes to me, but I kind of keep track of all of it on a Trello board, and also I have a Word document.
Gotcha. So that brings up a really good, a good point is when you, what are the topics that you like to talk about?
So yeah, this is a good question because I don't have like, there's not one specific genre that I like to talk about. So I guess there's a handful of things I like to talk about. One of them is I'm very forward thinking in the, like you'll notice I did a video talking about like how our world will change after the pandemic.
Sure.
So that the idea of me doing that is I like the idea of thinking about the future of technology stuff. So a lot of times if I can think of a view that I have of something where the future might go, I like to talk about stuff like that. I like talking about anything that relates to some of my idols. So like a Joe Rogan, for example, is somebody that I definitely am very inspired by. So if he does something that I want to talk about, I'll talk about that kind of stuff. And then I look at YouTube as a way to document my life. So to me, it's just like a giant journal of everything that I'm going through because I do live streams so you can actually hear like what happened to me that day. I do vlogs so you can see me interact with my friends. So anything I feel like...
How do you record those vlogs? Do you use your iPhone or do you use your phone?
Yeah, so I've actually just been doing that on my iPhone and it works okay. Like it's not the best. And that's something that at some point I probably will shift over to doing that. It's a little difficult though to figure out how to do these types of vlogs because like I don't have a videographer. Like I have several people who will do it with me. Mm-hmm. So I haven't figured out how to do that. But right now I've been using iPhones to do the vlog stuff. And vlogging is that's a whole other beast to try to figure out because vlogging, it's like, I can act normal in a vlog now. Like I don't feel like I'm in front of the camera, so I need to do something, but it can be a little complicated to make it entertaining.
Yeah. And then of course, even if you videotape it, sometimes you don't have the right sound equipment, so you maybe wear a lavalier, wireless lavalier or something. It can be a challenge. And then of course, like I don't do vlogging, but sometimes I've toyed with the idea of doing a YouTube show just to do exactly what you're talking about, but it's a lot of work. And even as I'm talking to you, I'm realizing how much work it does take to produce something like that of quality, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I have to ask this question, but do you talk about politics given the current state of the world?
So when it comes, yes and no. So I will talk about some, like I did a video recently that was about what's been happening in Chicago. And when I do live streams, a lot of times I'll get asked really tough questions on things because people want to hear me go into more controversial topics. So I will talk about it, but I would say that a lot of times what I try to do on those topics is sort of try to paint the perspective of here is the things to consider with this. So instead of trying to say, here's why I'm right, listen to me, I just try to paint more of the perspective on, okay, we live in a world where people try to really, we have a lot of people who pick a side and they kind of just stay on that side and like, that's it. And some people would probably consider it to be wishy-washy to do what I do on a lot of these topics, which I disagree and say that I'm being sort of not devil's advocate, but sometimes I'm just like, okay, so maybe you think this, but here's probably what this other person is thinking, just as something to consider. But I think most people can probably get an idea as to what my views are on a lot of things, because I'm very opinionated. So it's not like I don't ever say what
I was just wondering if you gave those opinions, if you ever worry about cancel culture or being attacked. I was talking to my husband earlier, and he's part of the Lakeview neighborhood group. And so right here in Lakeview on Clark Street at the Happy Camper restaurant. You familiar with that restaurant?
I think I've seen that before. I've never been there.
Yeah, it has like a little camper as a logo, and there's all these silver things that shine. Anyway, it's very popular. There's one in Old Town as well. Anyway, a policeman went into that restaurant, and the server on his ticket wrote "Quit your job," right, to the policeman on his receipt. And so the policeman didn't say anything about it, but one of his buddies found out about it and posted it to social media. And so that server was fired. And the police officer did not eat his food because he was afraid that it was tampered with, right? And so the restaurant apologized and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, fast forward, the Lakeview neighborhood group on Facebook got into this. And I mean, the vitriol on both sides attacking each opposing side was so crazy. And so it just reminded me, because being in media, I'm in the same position a lot of times. Even if you try and take the middle, someone will find fault with it. I wondered on YouTube if somebody ever says, what do you think about this? And how do you navigate that without violating your personal integrity?
So this is a tough one because I do a lot of live streams. That's one of I probably do 3, maybe 4 live streams a week between my main channel and the podcast channel. And yeah, I get asked some of these questions. And keep in mind, my audience actually, I have people on both sides of the political spectrum. Obviously, I have moderates too, but I definitely have people who are right and left who watch my content, which is very interesting.
That is
because
interesting.
I just been one, and I get people of like different age demographics, people from different countries. So like, I get a lot of different people who do like my content, which to me is great. Like I like having a lot of variety in the types of people who will watch the content that I do. But it's tough because I've had my supporters attack my other supporters because some will be on the left, some people will be on the right, and they'll just have disagreeing opinions on things. And it's a little tough sometimes. That's why a lot of times when I get these types of comments that will happen maybe live, I will have to call people out and be like, hey, look, here's why you might be wrong. Here's why you might be wrong. The truth might be somewhere in the middle of this, but I'll defend if I really feel strongly like I really think this person's in the wrong. Of course, like there's some issues where if someone comes in there and just says a blatantly racist thing, I'm gonna be like, okay, yo, get out of here. Like I've kicked people out before. I have moderators who come in and they'll kick people out of the live chats if they say something that is like very offensive.
Sure.
But doing it live is definitely a bit of a challenge because you got to think quick on your feet when you have to say these things. Like I can avoid topics, but I can't do it when it's live unless I just ignore it.
Well, yeah. I mean, the point I was trying to sort of get to is, do you ever feel that people hold you personally accountable for your followers' opinions, or do they ask you directly, like, "Hey, Steven, what do you think about this? Like, what do you think?" Here's a thing that came up in conversation. The mayor, Lori Lightfoot, was on vacation in Maine during one of the weekends when there were a lot of riots, and people have very strong opinions about that. And so there's someone's like, if someone said to you, "Hey, Steven, what do you think about that?" How do you handle a direct question like that?
So in that particular one, I'd probably tell people. I'd probably tell people like, I understand why that's really frustrating, but maybe there's some parts of the story that you don't know yet. Like maybe, I mean, are we expecting her to always be in town for every single weekend moving forward? Like, could she never go
Well,
anywhere?
I guess what I'm sort of trying to understand is, like, sometimes, do you handle it with comedy? Do you handle it from a news perspective, like you say, okay, I want to speak to this in a more serious tone? Do you make a joke about it? I was just curious, because listening to your personality, I'm trying to figure out, like, it's easy to see how you can handle these easy topics, but how do you navigate these more difficult topics, and what is your go-to for that?
I'd say it is a little bit of all of those. Like, I definitely have a comedic tone a lot of times. If I feel like people are just hammering on people, I will make light of it. That's something that I do, is I laugh and smile a lot. I think that's a lot of the reason why people will even be there in the first place, because I'll make people feel a little bit more
Sure.
comfortable maybe. But I I have done both. Like, I have actually just said my flat out opinion on things, and people might have been, I'd say most people are supportive, but there's been, of course, some people who have been
Sure.
like, you don't understand, Steven, this or that. And I just, yeah, cancel culture is 100% a thing. That's why, like, I definitely do think about the things before I say them. But if the thing that I do a lot of times is, if I genuinely don't feel comfortable answering a question because I don't think I have enough information, which happens all the time because there's new events happening all the time and I don't have all the information yet, and people want me to speak on it. And I'm like, look, I have to research this. I'm not giving you my opinion until I actually know what's going on. So a lot of times, if I want to deflect something, I just say, I don't have enough information on that.
Let me ask you another question hypothetically. Um, right now, you're starting out, right? I see some of the traffic on your YouTube channel. I say, okay, 600 views or whatever, right? Good starting out. You're not really talking to a huge audience yet, right? But so cancel culture really is not something that you have to worry about right now.
Mm-hmm.
But what happens, Stephen, and have you ever given this any thought? What happens when your videos get 1 million views and these people that decide to cancel you because they don't like what you're saying and they go after your sponsors or advertisers? Do you ever think about that? Like how do I be true to myself as I'm getting to 1 million views? And what happens if I'm at 1 million views? Now I'm above the radar, right? That's what scares me. Is right now I have a good sized audience, but I have an even larger audience as the CEO of my company, as the president of the Equalitous Content Creators Association. I have a very big reputation within LGBT media, and I have to work very hard to sort of walk that fine line. Because if somebody says, I don't like your moderate views, we're not going to advertise in any of your publications, right? That's a real impact, right? So I'm just curious, if you, as a young YouTuber starting out, do you think about that? Because that's now part of our thing, our culture.
Yeah. So I think about this a lot, actually, because people will say I'm a little bit paranoid, and I don't know if I'm paranoid as much as I think before I do anything. Like, I'm very much somebody who, I try to think about, what does the 5-year plan look like of this? What happens if I get as big as I want to get? What happens in these scenarios? So this is something I think about a lot, which is why I've sort of want to hold firm to the idea that I will own the things that I talk about. So if I don't want to talk about something, I'm not obligated to talk about it. I can choose. If someone asks me something, I don't have to talk about it if I don't want to talk about it. And that's what's kind of nice too, is that YouTube is my own business. So if If I'm tired of making content on something, I don't have to talk about it. If somebody wants to say, hey, you said in one of these videos that you didn't like this, and now you say that you do like it. I mean, people grow, people change their opinions. I think one of the worst things that we do as a culture is when people, they screw something up, we cancel them immediately. No second chances, because that is not applicable to how real life is. In real life, if somebody screws something up, how are they going to learn from it if you just cancel them immediately? Of course, we all know that there are certain things where there's no excuse. You do something really terrible, you murder someone, no excuse. But I just think that we're really harsh on certain things. So I think I just try to have pride in the things that I say. And if there's something really controversial, I don't think I have enough of education to speak on, probably not going to speak on it. So okay. I try to be a little calculated in some of the things that I say.
That's good. Do you, in your mind, do you say to yourself, I want to create this type of video? Like I want to create positive videos, or I want to create thought-provoking videos? Do I want to create intellectually challenging videos to get people to think? Or do you just basically say, I'm going to create whatever's in my head, I'm going to spew it out onto YouTube?
I'd say it's that second part. It's definitely what's in my head, but I do think that there is a idea that I'm trying to get across on my YouTube channel, which is I want people to, I want to create something that I feel like doesn't exist already. So if I create something where I feel like this video has been done 1,000 times, that will bother me. So I try to go into every video with this idea of, I want to make a video that I haven't seen before, like something that I would want to watch personally. So I think one of the things that upsets me the most is that our role models of today are terrible. It's something that I feel passionately about. I think we are absolutely obsessed. What was that?
I said I 100% agree. Jesus Christ. The only thing missing from 2020 is a damn meteor strike.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just feel like our role models are absolutely horrid. And I actually think that this is if you ask like what's one of my main motivators in all this stuff, it's I want to actually be the role model that I wish existed. Like I want to be I cannot stand when people say like, I'm a celebrity, but I'm no role model, because that is just, it's not true. I completely disagree. Any person who is in the public light, you are a role model, whether you want to be or not. Now, right. Role model, you may not be a good role model. You may not go out of your way to do things, but people will look up to you. And you just have to face that fact, because people look up to people who are not famous. Like there's people who will look up to me and be like, wow, Steven's really consistent on YouTube. I wish that I could do that. So to them, I am their role model. There's someone from Ohio who's thinking about moving to Chicago, and I am their role model because they're like, Steven did it, I can do it. Like that's that right. Kind of stuff happens all the time.
Let me tell you something. When Chadwick Boseman just died, Black Panther.
Yep.
And I did a lot of background on his life. What an amazing human being, and what a tragedy about his death at 43 years old. And I thought to myself, it just made me realize that everything you do has an impact on some level. Whether you're a ditch digger or whether you're an actor, you're somebody's role model, and you can have an impact. And he made a huge impact. And I wrote that I wish I want to aspire to be more like him. And he did so many things for people that, were not public displays of it, not like the Kardashians, who I think are horrific role models, or, I can go on the Real Housewives or any of this other reality TV crap, is horrific. And, but there are plenty of people like, I always love to read. I think Keanu Reeves is a horrible actor, but he's an awesome human being. And that's someone who does things and does the right things and doesn't look to, is anybody watching? And so I agree with you that some of our role models really, I think, encourage people to act poorly and make it seem okay. And my thought for you as I watch some of your videos is that, okay, he's entertaining, and there's some things that, like the pandemic one was like, okay, that's thought-provoking. What is the future like post-pandemic? That's a legitimate question. I think that a lot of people, even a lot of smart people, smarter than me or you, are considering what that new paradigm is post-COVID. So do you, in your mind, do you look at yourself more as an entertainment YouTuber or a entertainment slash educational knowledge increasing, wisdom seeking YouTuber? That's a lot, isn't it?
Yeah, well,
long title.
No, I think I see myself as an entertainer. I think I see that first and foremost is I'm making something that I hope that people can be entertained by. But I do think that since legacy is something that's very motivating for me, is the idea that I can leave behind a legacy. People can see the things that I did and maybe it will impact them. Maybe it won't, but the idea that I have the ability to do that is something that I really like a lot. So I do think about when I make a video that someone can walk away from it and be inspired by something that happened in that video, even if it was just they were inspired to have a slightly better day that day.
Sure. I like that idea. And, Stephen, I think that you're right on the right track in what you're doing. And I hope that you'll continue to just create content. And I'm going to subscribe to your YouTube channel. I want to keep track of you and see how you're progressing. We're both in Chicago. So, I may not be your demographic per se, but I have a lot of contacts in media, not just LGBT media, big media. Plus I own a lot of things myself. Maybe there's something that we might be able to do together. Maybe there's a way that we can help cross promote your show in some fashion or spotlight what you're doing in Chicago. One of the things that I'll be launching by the end of the year, I think, is a website called outvoices.us. And it's not only about our community, but it's about our allies as well. And part of that is going to be our podcast network and our YouTube network. And so there may be an opportunity for you to reach a larger audience locally, and then maybe even nationally or globally by that. So you make sure that you keep in touch, and Nick will provide you with my email. And I want to see some of the things that you're doing. And I have a question. Do you ever consider making film? Like, do you ever, like I work with several student filmmakers where they make short films and things like that. Do you ever do anything like that? Or are you specifically for like YouTube?
I'm pretty self-aware of the things that I really am good at and the things that I like. I'm just not really that good of a videographer. Like, it's just not something I'm particularly that good at. And it's being behind the scenes is nothing I like. I'm just not as passionate about those things, I guess.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So just not as much of an interest, but I will say this has made me realize that I need to take a step forward and get better at some of that stuff, though, because as much as I'm not as good at it, I think it's important to still be okay at it. So I'm not as interested in it for sure, but I just really like I really like YouTube in particular. It's my favorite, but I'm always open to doing other things because I think I'd be naive to not consider some other avenues. I'm just curious,
since you like to be on camera. The other thing that I think is fascinating is for someone like you, how do you describe your show? Like, do you just sit in front of a camera like you're doing now and just talk about your life? Or do you put any production value into creating? Like I was watching PewDiePie's YouTube channel. I was like, how is this guy making $75 fucking million a year? And all he's doing is like sitting there being a fool, right, with his friends, right? So I was like, I could do that. But the thing is, do you ever say to yourself, I can do that? Why is he? And try and make sense of that.
Oh, I think about it all the time. That's one of the reasons why I do this, because I'm just like, I can do this. Like I don't think there's
there's a wrong way to do what you're doing. Quite frankly, yeah. If you've watched any YouTube videos, there is everything from 100% fucking batshit crazy to, this is a professional YouTube video. And we haven't even talked about the next thing I'm going to ask you about, and that's TikTok.
Yeah.
And so, but I mean, so I don't think there's a wrong thing to create YouTube content. I was just curious, like, do you see yourself as, hey, I can succeed at what I'm doing by just being myself in front of camera? Or do you have to add layers of production value like graphics and animations and stuff like that?
I think the things that I do the best on YouTube is I think that I can be entertaining. I think I can be articulate. I think I can be funny sometimes. It's not my biggest strength, but I think I can be funny. And I think that I can be very relatable and authentic. And I focus on that because that's what I do well. I'm not great with special effects. So what I did on my channel, and you'll see it from my most recent videos, I cut out all the variables of the things that I'm not as good at. And I've just focused on, okay, what is something I can replicate easy that will play at my strengths? If I make the videos just look good without having to do much. So I bought this microphone. Like this is about one of the nicer microphones you can get. I built this background so it looks pretty professional. Right. It looks okay. And I basically, it sounds good and it looks good. And then now I can focus on the things that I do well. The rest of it is really simple. So for me, I think anyone who's going to do YouTube, you have to figure out what are the things that you do best. If maybe you're not as entertaining or as interesting, then but you're really good at videography stuff, then do that stuff. Like that's going to be entertaining for people. Play up that strength. Don't worry so much about, you don't even have to be in front of the camera. Honestly, a lot of YouTube channels are really successful from just posting clips and just talking. So if you can do that, then just do it. But for me, this is just how I do it best.
I'm a huge sci-fi nerd, right? So I always get suckered into the this one that I follow. His name is Mike Zero. You ever heard of him on YouTube? Write him down, Mike Zeroh. And he talks about Star Wars, right? But he talks like this. I think that we should, Boba Fett. And I mean, he just has a weird way of describing. But here's the thing. It's almost mesmerizing. So I watch his videos, even though I think they're shit, because I can't stop listening to that weird voice of his. And that's his hook, right? And so my thought is that, and I'm looking at you right now and I'm like looking at you and I'm looking like, okay, how would this work? Right? Because that's what I do in my business. I look at talent and I say, how is this going to play on camera? Right. So I'm looking at how you're projecting yourself. I'm not trying to be critical or anything, but I'm just looking at this and I'm thinking, so if you just pretended like you were Conan, right? You said he was one of your idols and you just sat in that chair and you interview people or you talk to, that fictitious person, that's where I would sort of go and try and be the better Conan. I mean, Conan was a writer. Do you know that? He was a writer. He wasn't even a on-screen personality for a long time. So I just am curious. I think that you have all the ingredients to be successful, in my view. Now you just got to build an audience, right? Because I will tell you that even with in publishing, nobody takes anyone with a small audience seriously. They go to the big audiences and they go to the conglomerates, right? So you just have to build that audience. So my next question delves into, what are you doing to build your audience?
So right now I do 2 to 3 YouTube videos a week normally. And then I do 3 to 4 live streams. And then I do a podcast episode. So those are all the content that I put out over the course of the week. So that's one of the ways I do it is every time I put out a video, like YouTube will presumably recommend it. So I'll get some people just from doing that. And then live streams are pretty helpful just because like sometimes somebody will just be on YouTube and they'll see live from Chicago and they'll just go in and click. I also, on Instagram, I usually, if people join my live stream, I'll go and message them afterwards and be like, hey, thanks for joining. So I've been doing this for the last couple of years where I have a bunch of people I touch base with. I have an email list of some people who have been supporters for the last couple of years.
And do you email them and say, hey, I'm going to be live on this date?
Yeah, I use Instagram a lot. Instagram is something I use a lot to try to put myself out there. But to be honest, I'd say like my marketing is probably one of the next things I need to be more focused on because I do a lot in terms of what I create and put out there. So like a big part of YouTube that people who've had success will tell you is just being consistent, like always putting out at least one video a week. And I've done that now for pretty much the last 2 years plus because all the live streams and everything else. So I've been doing a lot of putting stuff out there, but not so much in terms like I've done no paid advertising or anything like that.
Sure.
And I don't know what my next step is for advertising and that kind of stuff, but I'm definitely thinking a bit more about it now, because now I'm getting a little bit further along with this and I'm starting to see that my audience is actually growing.
Well, I can tell you, I'll give you a little input here, is be creative, connect with other people that are creating content, and then say, hey, I will share your link if you share my link, and vice versa. And believe it or not, people are pretty reasonable and will let you do that. The other thing too is join an association where there are content creators where you can network. Like, for instance, the Content Creators Association that I created, called the Equalitous Content Creators Association, already has 50 members. And we're going to have a conference here in Chicago next year. Hopefully COVID is over by then. It is not LGBT specific. It is across the board for content creators. And that includes publishers, bigger print publishers, websites, and bloggers, podcast creators, and YouTubers. They all get together and they share their experiences. And then we have a suite of speakers in our industry that talk about how to better, create content, how to distribute content, how to create those alliances. So if you email me, I will link you to that so you can at least be aware of what's going on. I think that would be another step. Don't be an island. That's what that's what I tell people. Don't be an island, because if you can connect with someone, what will happen, Stephen, is one day you will connect with the right person, and that person will give you access to the things that you would never be able to have access to on your own. That's the benefit of networking and being out there.
Yeah, well, first off, I want to say thank you. I mean, obviously, the amount of help that you've been just pointing me in certain directions, and this has been great. And I do think that I want to put myself out there a little bit more in terms of like maybe joining a group or something with people. But like right now, I do collaborations. Like I'm pretty good about, like, people will hit me up in the DMs on Instagram. So I've done quite a bit of that type of stuff, but I do really like the idea of kind of like what you're saying. Like, there are a bunch of other ways of doing it. Like, I don't just have to talk to people on the Instagram DMs. Like, I do want to branch out a bit more. Of course, it's a little weird right now with the pandemic going on. But yeah, no, I fully agree. And I'm really open to that stuff too. It's not like I won't do it. It's just, I am very busy doing the content part that I will admit that sometimes it will take away a little bit from maybe the promotional side, because I'm just trying to get as good as I can. So I've got something great to promote.
I'm going to give you another piece of advice, and this is all free. And that is, you can create the best fucking content in the world, but if you don't have an audience, who's seeing it, right? So marketing is very important. It has to be on the forefront of your brain. And it doesn't have to always be paid marketing, but creative marketing and getting out there. So yes, one of the things that I've done in the past is I will take on a project and I will not make any public announcement about what we're doing, because I want to fix all the problems before we're in the public arena. Because when you're in the public arena and fixing problems, everybody's watching you, and they have the attention span of a gnat. So you can see that you're baking a cake, but they look at it like, oh, this cake came out of the oven and it's a shit show, right? What you're doing is saying, I'm getting all the ingredients together and I want to deliver a finished cake, and people ooh and ah over it, right? You get that analogy? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I get that. Use this time in the space that you're in to perfect your craft, to perfect your delivery, to perfect your show, to perfect your production. Because by the time you get into the spotlight, and I believe you will eventually, it's too late. Now you're going to have everybody and their brother watching you. So that's what you use this time for, and cherish it. Don't be in such a hurry to get it into the limelight, because then it's a little bit more difficult to create some things. But also you should be thinking, how can I get my show in front of as many eyeballs as possible? Because the more eyeballs that you get in front of your show, the more eyeballs you can deliver to potential advertisers or sponsors. That's what they're looking for. They could give two craps about your content. And I'm telling you from experience, the only thing they're interested in is, can you deliver the impressions? Can you deliver the sessions? Can you deliver the views, the likes, the whatever? And so that's has to be an integral part of your business model. And if it isn't, then you're a creator and you're maybe creating great stuff, but you're not going to be attractive to the people that are going to help you really propel to the next level. That sounded like a lot, but in essence, just make it a two-pronged approach. Create great content and good production, and then promote yourself.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think that is the tough part, is when you are making this like a business, you are so focused on, like I get like super laser focused in on something. It is hard sometimes to take a step back and look at all the different angles. Like there are moments where I do it well, but there are definitely moments where I spend too much time on one thing in particular and another thing like kind of falls behind. So it's something I think of, and it's something that I know I need to start working on a little bit.
I'm going to give you another hint what you can do. So one of the things that we always do is, even when I started my podcast, I put out there that I was looking for an intern, right? Unpaid intern. We didn't have any budget. I just wanted some young people to get involved and to help me, right? I had more than I can tell you apply, right? Everybody wanted to be part of the podcast because they had a love for the creation part. So what I'm saying is, even if you don't have the time for marketing or social media, be creative and see if you can find an intern to come out, and all they do is, twice a week they blast stuff out, or they do research for you, or they do marketing, or whatever they do to help you. There are creative ways to get things done that doesn't necessarily have to cost money. That's the point I was making. See, there are two types of people in the world, right? There's one type of person that believes there's only one way of doing things, and anything outside of that stream of doing things, it doesn't even enter their realm of consideration. And then there's another type of person. That person is, if I can't get over this wall, I want to get through this wall. I want to get around this wall. I will go under this wall. I will fly over this wall, or whatever, right? That's what I'm saying is there's many more ways to sort of to achieve that. Now, I don't know how many people you have in the production of your show, but from a standpoint of marketing, when you say you're very busy creating content, that's where you should be. But that doesn't mean you can't get some help and have somebody else, cover your flank. And it doesn't have to necessarily cost you anything. Sometimes it's just a matter of, here's a coffee card from Starbucks, and they love that too. So there you go. That's my 2 cents on that. I want to see you succeed. I think you have some potential. I think that you have the on-screen, what do you call that? TVQ, that people always look for. And I think that the way you deliver things is natural and it's easygoing. It's not forced or contrived. I think that's important. And so now you need to build the business part. And that's important because that's what you're creating, right? You're not just an artist, you're a business artist. I should coin that term, Nick. I think I need to trademark that. But so here, we're almost at the end of the show, but I want to give you the last bit of time. I want you to tell people where they can find you, and I want you to give them a call to action. That's what I want to hear. I want to hear you say, I want you to subscribe to my channel, and this is how you do it. I want you to like me on Facebook or Instagram. This is how you do it, and this is where you go to do it. There you go.
Okay, so definitely subscribe to my YouTube channel. My YouTube channel is Stephen Russell B, and that's Stephen with the V, not a PH, because that's a trash way of spelling it. And that's Russell with 2 S's and 2 L's, and then B like boss. And then so you'll be able to find me there probably pretty easily. Maybe add Chicago afterwards if you can't find me for whatever reason. My Instagram is also at Stephen Russell B. It's also my Twitter. Make sure that you follow me on both of those because I'm very, very active on, well, not so much Twitter, but definitely on Instagram. And then I have a podcast that I do with my friend Brandon. That's the Everything Must Go podcast. If you type that on YouTube, you'll find that channel, or you can just go to Spotify or any of your podcast apps. Type in Everything Must Go podcast. You'll see a yellow logo with a lightning bolt coming from a cloud. And that's when you know you found the right place. It'll say Everything Must Go really, really big. And if you do if you do all of those things, I'm telling you, you will be along for the ride and you will have a special place in my heart.
Excellent. Now I'm telling everyone in my audience, go and follow this guy while he's not famous, because someday he's going to be famous and you can say that you knew him when. And he's from Chicago. So if you're in Chicago, and most of my audience is in Chicago, you make sure you go and follow him on his social media and his YouTube channel. And Stephen, it was so great to have you on the show. It was nice to chat with someone that is really trying to create something unique. And I wish you all the best, and anything I can do to help. Nick will give you my email. Feel free to reach out to me if I can help open the door or make an introduction. I'm happy to do so.
Yeah, definitely appreciate you. Thanks for having me on here. I'll definitely be hitting you up after this because, I mean, this has been a great experience. It's something I like doing. I'd be happy to come on again sometime. And
absolutely. And by the way,
you.
I'm in Chicago too, so it's not like it's far away. So when this pandemic is over, maybe we can all get together and brainstorm on different ways. I'd like to see you break through to the next level.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
All right. Take care. Have a wonderful evening.